All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Rant and Pray. This is a podcast where we talk about stuff, a lot of stuff, complain about them, rant about them, and then at the end we pray about them. And it just so happens that the things that we end up talking a lot about are related to race and to Blackness, to the Black Lives Matter, to identity within that. But I've also done podcasts on breastfeeding and healthcare for Black women and things like that. So we're not just one dimension, but it is connected to who we are as people and as Black people. And we're just hoping that this podcast will help our counterparts, our beautiful white friends and family, to see our struggle and to see where we're coming from and things like that. But today I'm joined by Console Muke, and I've known Console since we were teenagers. I met your family when I was a teenager in Dublin. So it's
It feels like
and
once
then we
upon a
lost
time.
touch for a while, and now we're back in touch again. And I just think she has such um, a great online presence. She talks about mental health a lot, which is unusual for a Black woman. It's not very common. It's not very popular, because we're raised to be strong Black women. Don't break down. Don't talk about it. Don't cry about it. And so it's such a breath of fresh air to have you on my news feed talking about these things that I really talk about and I love talking about. So how are you? Welcome to my show.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me. I've actually been so impressed with like all of your podcasts, the ones I've been able to watch. And yeah, it's a much needed conversation. My name is Console. Um, I have an organization, Believe Work Advanced, that basically, which the whole goal of it is just to make mental health in normal day-to-day conversation to have with your friend, with your family. Like I just think mental health is something that we're born with. We can't run away from it. It's not something you can ignore and just be like, oh, mental health doesn't affect me. You are born with a mental health. And the longer we keep ignoring the fact that that's such a vital part of being a human being, the more disservice we are doing to ourselves and to the people around us. So that's basically the aim of Believe Work Advanced. Yeah, I've met Maureen, I feel like once upon a time, I would say. And it's so great, like to see kind of all of our journeys from where we started to where we are now and the conversations that we are having. So I'm super, super excited to be here and to just, yeah, hopefully add something to the conversation if I can.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind sharing with us, what's your background? Which country are you from? And I know you're Irish now. Yeah.
Yeah, I was born in Rwanda. I left when I was 2 years old because of the war, and we moved around a bit after Africa. Then I lived in Ivory Coast for about 8 years, and then we moved to Ireland, and I've been in Ireland for 15 years on and off because I always seem to manage to end up in other continents, other countries for a while, and then I always come back. I feel like Ireland has become my home. It's actually the country I've lived in the longest,
Yeah.
so it has become my home. But then when you're talking about identity, it's that thing where you're like, well, oh yes, I am Rwandese. I'm Rwandese, but from my earth, from my lineage, from my parents and everything. But then I've lived in so many places and I've met so many different cultures
Yeah.
that sometimes you feel like a nomad, like you don't belong anywhere because you have so many different places that you associate yourself with. That's why usually when people ask me where are you from, I just tell them I'm from the world because I'm like
It's too long a story, and especially like you lived in Rwanda when you were 2 years old. So it's not like me. I lived in Kenya till I was about 11. So I have good memories. Like I can remember things like whenever I go back to Kenya, I remember a lot of the streets, a lot of the roads. I don't need a sat nav type of thing. Um, And Tim, when I brought Tim, he was so impressed. He was just like, "You still
Oh.
remember?" Like, so I have that, and I remember people. I might not necessarily remember names of some people, but I remember quite a lot. And
Yeah.
so I can see how for you that would be quite difficult. And then you said you moved around Africa a bit, um, and then living in Ivory Coast. So not even, you're just kind of like,
Yeah, it's just what's that thing they call it? There's a name they have for people who keep hopping around countries. But anyway, yeah, because I left Ivory Coast. I was 13 years old to come here,
mhm,
um, which honestly, I think okay, I will just speak from my own point of view. I think we come to the Western world because of better opportunities and because
mhm,
of for various reasons that there may be.
yeah,
It's not necessarily because we don't love our where we come from.
mhm,
And to kind of like you were 11 when you left. I left when I was 13. To live in that time when you're kind of going into teenage years, because I study psychotherapy and I study, the development, child development, and how we create our identities and our belief system.
mhm,
And to have that gap, especially for me, moving from Ivory Coast was a French-speaking country. Then I studied English in school in Ivory Coast, but I did not know much English when I came here. And then
yeah,
you're thrown into school, and then
mhm,
you have to adapt. You have to reconnect. And I remember when I got to Ireland, it took me a good 3 years before I stopped missing. And it's not even that I stopped missing Africa or
mhm,
Africa. It was just because I felt like because there was so many turmoils happening in Africa at the time, and I was planning a trip back to see all of my friends, and I was super excited. I had all of my suitcase, everything, the plane tickets, and then they had a war or whatever unrest in the country, and I couldn't go. And at that moment, it broke my heart so much, and I was like, okay, I can't stop. I can't think about Africa anymore. I can't listen to African music anymore. I just need to focus on this country that I'm in, and just and it's because it's something like you were saying, as African people, as women, we are so taught to be strong and to just keep adapting. You don't really take a moment to pause and see how
yeah,
all of those changes, all of those um lack of sense of belonging, lack of identity, not knowing who
yeah,
you are, not being able to go back home, not being able, it affects us, but we're not even able to talk about it. You just keep
yeah,
going with
yeah.
life.
And there's almost this thing where you're expected to just be grateful that you're in
Mm,
Ireland now, from both your family and from both the Irish people, I remember my first night in Ireland and feeling really lost. For some reason, ended up in this house anyway, and that's where my parents were coming to pick me up from, because long
mm.
story about how I got here, but um, anyway, so I ended up in this house with like lots of people, lots and lots of people. A lot of them were Nigerian, and then my parents were there as well, and some other Kenyan people. And I'm in this bedroom. I think I just needed to be alone, right? So I find this bedroom
Mm,
and I just sit there, and I'm sitting there blankly, like staring at this wall. And an adult in my life comes in, and she's just like, you should just be grateful that you're here.
mm.
And then she was like, "Are you not happy to be here?" And I was just like I've literally left everything. Like I spent most of my life without my mom, and up to that point
Mm,
had never really lived with my stepdad. They had a child at this
mm,
point. um
mm,
and then I've left my boarding school with the people that I was in school with, the people that had become my family, and then my grandmother, who was a big part of my life since I was like 0 years old. And I'm sitting on this bed, really fancy bed, nice house, whatever, but I'm miserable. But I didn't have the choice to be miserable.
yeah.
I didn't have a choice to be sad about it.
Mm.
And especially at 11, 13, like
It's
it's
such
a
a culture
major,
shock.
yeah. And it's such a major point in your life, isn't it?
Yeah, in the development of yourself as a person, even
Yeah.
as what relates, all of a sudden you're in a place that you know, like you say, you know the streets, you know your friends, you know you are at ease because
Yeah.
it's what life has been all of this time. And even for me, I remember when my dad told us we were coming to Ireland. I had never heard of Ireland before then. Like I had to go on
Me too.
and look it up. And then because it was an island and it was showing on the map that it's an island, I was like, oh, okay, at least we're gonna have good weather and we're gonna be chilling at the beach and you know. And then here I am on the plane.
Wrong island.
Why is it so cold?
Yeah.
It came around September time and it was raining.
Oh
And I
no.
remember I was on the plane looking out, and there's because this island has so much fields, so many fields, especially when you're in the sky. And I was just looking at it, and I was looking at my dad. I'm like, "Are you sure this is where we're coming, or are we all like on a stopover or whatever?" Like you say, and for us, we were excited to actually come to live in Ireland just because it was going to be a great opportunity for my dad to get better healthcare because my dad had been sick for quite a while, and also for us even better opportunities. You know the struggles that exist in Africa. Even people who are educated cannot find jobs, or even when they find job, it's not that really great job that they can. There's a lot of difficulties there. So definitely there was a lot of sense of gratitude and a lot of sense of even excitement at a new adventure. But I think once you come here and you try to adapt and you try to push through, there is that sense of like you can't even complain, you can't even say you miss home, you can't even and for me, not even being able to express myself properly in English, then you're in a new school and you have there's like all of these different terms, all of these different, people will say stuff and I will not be able to understand what they are saying, or if I speak, I'm speaking the wrong way. And then you start going from like a kid who was so joyful and so like outspoken to just slowly but slowly shutting yourself down and trying to figure out where you fit in, trying to find like how can I belong in this environment that I'm now in. And it is hard. It is hard. And that's one of the things. So when people who are racist or who, for lack of better terms, who are not as knowledgeable as I feel they should be, when they start talking about, oh, just go back to your country, or just when I start giving those type of yes, that's another thing, dealing with racism. I never knew racism until I came to us.
Girl, I did not know I was Black till I came here. I was like, what? I'm Black?
And then you're walking on the street, just going to the shop, and you have kids following you with a racist slur, and you're like, you start feeling now your safety is in danger, because they will really sometimes they can really come up in your face and really get at you, like trying to provoke you really. And it's like a bunch of guys, a bunch of girls, and you're just so intimidating. It's a very intimidating and scary process to go through.
And I was gonna say, I remember coming to your house, right? And I got off the bus too early. Did I get the bus? Oh, how was I coming? Because sometimes I would walk the back way. It was a really long walk. So you lived in, was it Clondalkin? No.
I think it was Tala at the time.
Huh?
Was it Tala? I think it was Tala. Was it not
No,
Tala?
I lived in Tala. And you before, not that time, not that. So you did live in Tala, and then you guys moved to
Lucan.
To Lucan. So I would sometimes walk down and to see your sister, because I was friendly with your sister. I remember this one time, a group of guys, joyriders in their car, stopping, calling me names, and then splashing water at me, like throwing their water at me, and I just remember feeling, because it was like you know, the back road, the Lucan bypass. Sometimes they didn't have a lot of people walking, so I felt so scared. And I was just like, oh my God. But yeah, you just
That's it. You know, them type of story, like the one you just shared, like it's them story that we share and we laugh about it, but
it's not funny.
funny. It's really not funny, just because you have no other choice but to laugh about it, because if you have to stop and really think about it, it's painful. Like for me, even hearing that story just breaks my heart, because nobody should ever have to feel that way. Nobody should ever be treated in that manner. And for other people to feel like it's so okay, it's a joke. Oh, I'm here with my friends. Oh, whatever. Here's a black person, you know, thing. And I remember one thing for me, I always kept trying to remind myself is, it's not their fault, it's their parents' fault, or it's their whatever. But even then, like it's an excuse I was trying to give myself to just kind of be like, let me not take it seriously, you know. And
but
you know, there was a
sorry. I was going to say it's their fault, because these were like, they must have been at least 15, 16, you know. And a lot of the discrimination I got, the people were around my age, maybe slightly younger, often my age or older. I would never have done that to anyone. Do you know what I mean? I would have never thought that it's okay to do that to anyone.
Thing is, that concept is not even in us. That concept is not even in us. And I think sometimes as well, it goes back to how we're brought up. Especially, I always think about the education in Africa, and even maybe in a lot of places. I think now it's changing a bit more, but it's like that whole thing of, you know, I remember being in high school because I was in my second year high school before we left. I just finished my second year, and you know, they teach you all how white people came to Africa and helped us develop and somehow brought civilization to us. And you kind of look, and I always think about how that psychologically affects us, because we're in a position of already loving white people. And I'm not saying this to say we should not love white people. I just think everybody should be, we're all human. It doesn't matter what race you are in. But because of even how in our history books, it will be so written that the white, what the whites have done for us is more than what we have done for ourselves. You're kind of already looking at white people and just being like, oh, they are great people, they are nice people and everything. But subsequently as well, what that teaches other people, if other people of other race were reading it, they'd be like, oh, Africans are less than. Or you know, that whole thing of monkeys in the trees and blah, blah, we're just thinking somehow we're just hanging in the trees and the white man came to save us. And it's really when I got older and I got more into really African history for my own research and for my own understanding, and I started seeing all of the amazing accomplishment we've made, and how basically literally civilization started from us. It's a bit of a it's how the tables were set up, you know. And then when you look at the situation in America, I don't know if you ever read the Willie Lynch letter, which was a letter about this man who owned a plantation owner. He sent this letter to every plantation owner, and the letter was how to make a slave. And I never finished reading that letter without me crying, because it really depicts how they broke down psychologically. Because his whole thing was, I want you to, if you follow what I am telling you, not only will you have slaves, but our kids and the kids of our kids, we still have them as slaves, because we would have broken them down so much psychologically that they will be disenfranchised for centuries to come. And then you look at the situation in America and you're like,
and they've succeeded.
It has really succeeded.
Because it's all about breaking down, you know, identity, breaking down who the person is. They took their names, they took their dignity, they were not allowed to marry, they were not, you know, like just so many things that they took away from them that African Americans can never quite recover. as a nation, as a people, they're not able to recover from all the damage that has happened.
Mm. I have such a strong belief in humanity that despite the chaos I see in the world, I still firmly believe that we will come to the other side of it. So I do believe that healing is possible for the Black people in America, and but there is gonna have to have a period of healing. And when you see the anger, I remember someone a white friend of mine saying about how, it's not right that they are rioting and breaking down stores and everything like that. And I'm like, I'm not for violence. I don't believe in violence. It doesn't lead us anywhere. But you cannot have put fire. You cannot you cannot have angered people for centuries. This is not something that just happened out of the blue or out of the norm. You cannot have angered and put down people for so long and not expect them to explode and not expect them to. And sometimes maybe the anger needs to come out first before the other conversation of peace talk can happen. Because it's like, it's not something new. It's like racism is not something new. But some people really did think that it has stopped existing, that it doesn't exist. And I'm like, no,
it never stopped. And African Americans, they've tried everything. You look at Martin Luther, he came with a peaceful way. You look at Malcolm X, he was more militant, but they've tried everything. And yet it's like they've been caged, and these people are just poking them with this, tongue, with this hot tongue, poking them and poking them. Of course, they're going to erupt. I'm surprised they haven't done more damage than they did. And I'm not saying that will solve anything. I'm not pro anything, but I'm surprised that more damage has not been done. And the reason I believe they haven't done more damage than than people think they've done, it's because they're still broken down people. They still don't believe in how powerful they are. If African Americans or Black people in America, if they chose not only to purchase from Black communities and to only support Black businesses, the American economy would collapse because they're the biggest consumer. But they don't know, they don't know just how powerful they are. So there's so many, if they're players, they're football players, soccer players, whatever, if they chose to take all their money elsewhere, the economy is gone. They're singers, they're rappers, they're actors, like they're some of the highest earners in America. And so they still, sadly, as a group of people, have not been allowed to know who they are. Sadly.
And that is such a powerful point.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that is such a powerful point. Definitely re-education needs to happen. Because as I was even saying, like when I was doing my own, I had a friend of mine who every time used to be, oh, you girls are not, it used to always pick up, like I've known the person for so many years. And at the beginning of us knowing each other, and he used to always be like, oh, you girls, you don't represent Africa and everything. You have your hair relaxed and everything. And I used to be like, oh, come on, don't be such an extremist. Like I'm a Black, proud African girl. Like I have no issue. I just find my hair, that whole thing of my hair is more manageable if it's relaxed and everything. And after a few years of always hearing him rant, I was like, you know what? Because he was a historian, he was studying history in university. And I was like, you know what? I'm a reader, I'm an avid reader. So why don't you send me the books, recommend me some books, recommend me some documentaries. Let me try, instead of me fighting what you're trying to say that I am less of an African, show me what it is that I'm missing out on. And when I started watching the documentaries about African history, all the inventions we have done, all of our culture, like from back before even the Greeks and everything, how everything started. And I literally, I felt it. I was like, oh my gosh, I've not been as proud as I could have been as an African person. Because little by little, as the centuries went on, as our heritage has been taken away from us.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that African masks are hanging in European museum?
Mm-hmm.
How come? It's like the way in Africa, I was I was so shocked when I found out that for whatever deal, I think during colonization of Ivory Coast, the rights of production of cacao was taken. I think by the Belge. I don't want to pinpoint somewhere. I don't like saying something I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, those rights were taken for 200 years, so that in a way that Ivory Coast can actually not have a manufacturing company to make
Wow.
the cacao, and they're the number one producer of cacao in the world. Yet
Wow.
it's only the rich that eat chocolate in Ivory Coast. And those little things, just
Yeah.
our little by little, our culture has been pillaged and has been taken away from us.
Yeah.
And what has then been, it's the same way I always, I believe in God and I believe in spirituality, and I definitely have such a strong, I was raised Christian and everything, but I always tell people, I'm like, before Christianity came to Africa, because it literally came, it was missionaries who came and took, building schools and putting kids into school. We had our own way of connecting with
Yeah.
God. We had our own way of having that connection with the
Yeah.
higher power that be.
Mm-hmm.
Yet all of our identities, like you're saying, identity, it's all been taken away from us. And if you keep telling someone that you are greedy, like when you think about even Africa, sometimes you can have that thing, oh, you guys are always at war, you're greedy, your thing, or whatever, and I'm like, we are not that. It's just because that's what's on the table at the moment.
But it's also the divide and conquer from colonialism.
Yeah.
So, the British man, the Spanish man, Portuguese, they came in, and the easiest way for them to take our stuff was by dividing us up. Yes, we already had kingdoms, right? So we had tribal kingdoms and whatever, but they divided up Africa, put us all in countries that we did not really, that's not how we functioned, right? And then within those countries realize that this tribe does not get on with this tribe, so we're going to pit them against each other. And tribalism, people want to be like, oh, Africans were always at war, but it was always more dignified than than after colonialism. And it's the divide and conquer mentality from the British, especially. And I can speak boldly about that because I did my Live Insert history essay on Kenya and the Mau Mau War. And that's exactly what they did. They divided up, they broke up the people. Even within the same tribe, they picked the people that they thought would be more for them and gave them positions. So even like somebody like Jomo Kenyatta becoming the first president of Kenya, he was a puppet, sadly. And for years we were celebrating him, and now I'm just like, wow. And then the guy that followed him was also a puppet and then turned into a dictator and ruled for like 24 years without opposition. There were no opposition parties allowed, and the British supported him.
That's Edo, because even enough, it's similar to what happened as well even in Rwanda with like just giving one tribe more power than the other one, so that one will feel then subjugated, and then we have to retaliate, or vice versa. Even going back to the Willie Lynch letter that I was talking about, there's one passage in it where they talk about, first of all, you have to take the men away from the household so that the woman will be left raising the kids, and the kids will not have a father figure. You have to take the strongest man in the community and put him take one leg, put one leg on one horse and the other one on another horse facing opposite, and tear him apart, so that the people will see that the strongest men cannot even defend them. And one of the things that they did say was, use one of the black person to become the one that gives the punishment, so that they will even start hating their own color. And it's like it's like you said, and then you see all of that trickling down and still being done today. Look at the whole fight between light skin and dark skin. All of that is in that letter. Like, it's actually crazy. When I first read that letter, I was like, oh my God, like I can't believe. And here are we then women bleaching their skins and everything.
Yeah.
Like, there's been so many. Our identity has been damaged so much. And then, like you say, we are celebrating all of these leaders who are actually puppets
Yeah.
to still keep our economy low, who are not really making rules or laws that really benefit us.
Yeah.
And but yet it's acceptable. And I always find it funny that a president will be on power for 20, 30 years. And then I always feel like whenever the people, the powers that be, whether people put that president, put that leader on power, when they are done using the person,
Yeah.
then they start calling them a dictator. Then they start calling, oh, he has done war against humanity. Then there has to be a revolution. And I'm like, so a revolution just happened now. So you guys just, I thought you guys are supposed to be the UN, are supposed to keep track of all of these,
Yeah.
crimes against
Right.
humanity. How come now all of
Look
a
at
sudden
Mugabe. Look at Mugabe. But when he started not being a puppet anymore, and he starts claiming land for his people, because we know it wasn't for his people, and all of a sudden, then Zimbabwe is under attack from the West because it's no longer a puppet. I'm not supporting anything that Mugabe has done, but it's been quite interesting to watch and see how the West still controls Africa. And I'm always amazed by how such a wealthy continent can still have some of the poorest people on earth. We still have places where there's no water, and where the production of cacao and like graphite and gold and diamonds and like
all the minerals.
Like coffee in Kenya, coffee and tea in Kenya, I don't even think there's a proper manufacturer in Kenya. Maybe there is now, but for years there wasn't. But we grow it so much,
Yeah, you
freaking
have
outside.
the best.
And it turns out there's Northern Irish tea. Punjab tea is Northern Irish tea. I was like, they don't even grow tea. How is it Northern Irish tea? That oil, petroleum being taken out of Africa to be manufactured elsewhere and then brought back, and it costs so much money.
So much more. I was even talking about Ankara clothing being made, the best Ankara being made in Holland. Yeah. And I'm like, and then it's sold back in Africa. And I'm like, how does that make sense? And I think for me as well, because sometimes, one of my biggest beef is that the news, who has ever decided that the news should only be about bad news? Because I do think that fear is such a great way to control people. And when you keep just talking about all of these things, people forget to talk about the people who are doing changes in Africa, for example. I know I was watching, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a few years ago. There was a thing on YouTube. They were doing a bunch of series. I can't remember the name of which show was doing it, but they were showing the people who are doing creating work for kids who are on the street, for example, teaching them how to sew, how to maybe sell, how to cook, so that they'll be able to not just live on the street and be saying, there's so many people within in Africa, despite everything that stands against us. There are still people who are trying to improve things, but up until the moment where really the Western world recognize how much they are still trying to take advantage of us, the changes that needs to happen will take so much more longer to happen. But they don't talk about it. Nobody look when
but I think there are quite a few Western people who are not even aware. Do you know what I mean? They're not even aware, and that's why I'm grateful. I'm not sure how good they are, but Fair Trade, the company that tries to do fair economy with Africa, like I have so much respect for them. I haven't done a lot of research, but on the surface, it looks good. It looks good.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, that they're trying to get the farmers, the tiny people who are growing these things to get paid well. And my grandmother is a farmer, and she has been for years, and they would get paid so little, and then these people would take her mangoes, her maize, her whatever, and get paid so much more. So it's for the little farmer, the women, majority of them are women surviving, trying to educate their little children, trying to make a better life for their children. And yeah, they get paid peanuts for all the work that they do.
And that's crazy that a person who is doing the labor and the work cannot set the pricing for their own merchandise.
Right?
Like that's insane. And they have to just accept whatever is taken. And it was the same. I don't know if things have changed in Africa, so I haven't really been looking too much into it. But I remember as well back in those days, the price of cacao or whatever, like they would sell them in 50 kilos bag, but it would be like cents. It would be maybe a couple of euro being given to a poor farmer who is working day and night for this thing. And then when it does the whole route from going outside and coming back in, a little bar like this is costing much more. It's probably costing 10 euro when the 50 kilos were bought 5, maybe 4 euros or something like that. So it's like, how can it really saddens me, because even our then, because there's the race issue, and I always think as well about the women issue, female issues, and I think it's kind of a bit not similar. I won't say it's similar, but I think the lack of awareness of people knowing exactly why we scream or why we are asking for those rights back is a bit the same. Like where people think that feminism is supposed to be about equality, but people will sit here and be like, but why are women have everything? Why are we complaining? Why are we asking to be treated better? And I'm like, everything in our society, from the news to the magazine to the Cinderella story. I was like, I was saying this yesterday actually to my brother. I was like, Snow White was there sleeping, and then this guy came. Apparently, because he's Prince Charming, it was okay for him to kiss her without asking for her consent.
Her consent.
It is so weird. The more I've been, because female empowerment is something I've been looking more into, especially this year. I've always, obviously, I'm a woman, so I've always kept an eye on it. But this year has been more of me doing research in it. And then now, when I watch actually movies or TV shows, and you can see how the woman is always at the mercy of the men, and that's called romance.
Girl. Right?
Really?
All the time.
All the time.
And like what really frustrates me, let's bring it back to Christianity, because I guess we're both from a Christian background, and Christian women have fallen for this more than any other woman, I think. Well, maybe not Muslim women, but religious women, maybe we should say religious women have fallen for this more than any other woman in the world. And like, I remember like saying things like, because I'm a strong believer, he got me pregnant. So my husband, I'm like, he got me pregnant, right? So if I'm looking after kids, he's looking after kids too. We're taking turns. And my mom and other women being like, oh, but it's the woman's job. It's the woman's job. I'm like, who said? And who said that I have to kill myself in the kitchen and that I have to kill myself, like, no, I'm taking my rightful place, and I've gotten into so much trouble. But I believe Jesus was a feminist. And if Jesus, so first of all, I believe Jesus was woke, he would be fighting for Black Lives Matter. Right? Like straight up, Jesus was woke, and Jesus was a feminist and is a feminist. He was always uplifting the women. Always. And I think it's crazy that we can take something so beautiful as spirituality and turn it into slavery. Jesus was woke. He would be woke if he was on this earth right now. He would not be siding with white extremists and white racist people. He would be fighting with the people at the margins, with the Black and oppressed people of color. And Jesus would be fighting with the women like straight up fighting with the women. And I think it's a pity that we take something as beautiful as spirituality and divinity and turn it into an oppressive system where we oppress Black people and we oppress women all the time. And
there's one, please, I'll finish.
No, and it changes the image of God to those people. It changes the image of God to us. For me, for a long time, God was this awful person.
Punisher.
Yeah, punisher up in heaven waiting for me to do something wrong. And God isn't. That's not who God is.
Yeah. It's not. And, I feel like there's three things that I want to say. But first, like about the God thing, I feel like God is in every one of us. You just have to recognize it. It's about recognizing the holiness within you, because God has given us life. He has given us breath. He's made us in His image. But people have taken that to interpret that God looks like us. No. He's made us in His image, in the sense of love, of peace, of understanding, compassion, empathy. And another thing with especially Christianity, and one of the things I came to a certain point, I was like, well, if we're gonna, when we go to, because for me, when I look at the Bible, I feel like a lot of the things in it is metaphorically spoken. I feel like it's passages that have been written so long ago, and that has been interpreted and reinterpreted over the course of how many millennia, and this is now what we have. And sometimes people interpret it in the wrong way, and not necessarily in the bigger message that God is trying to deliver to us. And for me, I always think, well, how can women feel really proud of themselves, feel really worthy of their worth or of their value, when you are telling us that, hey, we were made from the rib of a man. So we are literally a sub part of a man. And also, we are the one that made Adam and Eve get kicked out of heaven, of the garden, of this beautiful thing. How can, when you read those type of messages, and those type of messages are taken so literally, in the sense of, a woman, a male and a female, why would a woman feel proud of themselves? So you will always feel like a sense of guilt just because. So I always think there's like two sub messages, subliminal messages that come with that. First of all, a woman is not part of a man. First of all, you should not listen to your woman, because by Adam listening to Eve, he got kicked out. So what woman says is not, don't listen to her. She is of the weak sex. She's going to be easily tricked. She's going to be easily manipulated, and a man should not listen to her. And I see that somehow in our upbringing, and obviously, I'm not even going to go into whatever the right things in the Bible, but I like to think about it from a philosophical point of view, that as men reading that and as women reading that, how can the men really have much respect for a woman, or how can a woman really have much respect for themselves if you are accused of having brought all of this pain into the world?
Sorry, I slightly disagree in that I think Adam was more easily deceived because Eve is having to deal with like Satan, right? She's having to deal with like this
bigger force.
And literally, Eve just goes, I ate this fruit, so.
No, thing is, I've had that argument brought to me.
Yeah.
I've actually
I think Adam
women are the weakest sex because she got.
Oh yeah, I've been told that too. I disagree. I think it was much harder for Eve to resist the devil, right? We believe it's the devil that tempted her, than for Adam to resist her. Literally, like he could have just said, "Woman." God said no.
That's such a good point you just made. I'm actually going to take that on. That's
so I think that. So, and then all throughout the Bible, right? So the thing about the Bible is it's important to read it as a whole, right? because then we lose things. So all throughout the Bible, it's never called the sin of Eve. It's always the sin of Adam. All throughout. And Jesus coming, he comes as a second Adam. He doesn't come as a second, he comes as a second Adam, and it's seen as a sin of Adam. And there's always the first Adam and then the second, who's Jesus, who comes to save us. And so the Bible actually in itself, when you look at it in itself, if you're not just taking one text, is not blaming the woman. And that's why I said Jesus is constantly coming to the rescue of the woman and like showing her value and worth. I think her being taken out of the rib is God's attempt to show us how interdependent are. So it's this idea of how connected they are. And there's this saying that he didn't take the bone out of Adam's head or out of his feet so that she's over him or she's under him. The bone out of her side so that they are equal.
Equal.
Yeah, they're equal. So she's coming from the side, but it's to show the connectedness. And this is 1:26 and 27, that God created them both male and female in his image, both male and female. So people want to, sadly, African Christians, okay, I'm constantly calling out African Christians because I think it's ridiculous. We've gotten worse than colonialists. So we take the Bible, and we've put in our culture, a messy, misogynistic culture into the Bible and into anything else, literally. And we just think we've used it to put women down, the same way the colonialists took it to put Black people down. And our men and some of our women have taken the Bible and use it to put you down. And they're like, oh, you need to cover your head. You need, you can't speak in church. You can't do this. You just have to have baby after baby after baby. There's no problem if I want to have the babies, but not because my husband wants me to. Do you know what I mean?
You know, and that yes, you're so absolutely right. I even love what you said. You have to read the Bible as a whole, because yes, a lot of people take so many little things out of context and they bring it forward, and they really coming from my own, like the various discussions I've had at a certain point, and you're right, there's been like a little bit that misogynistic spin put around it, and people will be like, no, this is why women should be like this. This is why women should be like this, and I'm like,
no, I disagree.
I disagree, but then you're not even allowed to disagree. You're actually,
I know. If you disagree, you're going to hell. You're a heathen.
And it's usually male that have told me this, by the way, especially the argument about, woman is not part of a man because she was made from a rib or whatever. Yeah. I'm like, no. It's to show, it's for the unity, like the same way the Trinity is one, the same way that a man and a woman, when they come together, we're supposed to have this beautiful unity. And this message of that you can do whatever to a woman is coming from not the Bible, because in Ephesians, it says that a man has to love the woman the same way that Christ loves the church. So Christ, by loving the church, he came and died, right? Therefore, if you're a true Christian man, you're not going to be hitting your wife. You're not going to be putting her down. You're not going to be, abusing her if you're a true Christian man. But I think a lot of these men are unconverted. They haven't, they say that they're Christian, but they have not met God. Because if they have, they would treat us with so much respect, so much dignity. They would allow us to shine and be the people that we were created to be. Again, going back to identity, they would honor the identity of God in us. Because for me, I felt so, as a woman, and I think even from what you've been saying, it makes so much sense by having those people come at me and giving me all of these type of different ideas or different way. And I always felt, even as young as I could remember, I just never could wrap, before I even knew what is right or whatever, I never could wrap my head around the fact that you're telling me that I am less than you just because you're a male and I'm a female, and seeing the oppression of women, you've seen it in Africa. You've seen how like the abuse of women is just so rampant. It's sad. And for me, I rebelled against the Bible enough. I didn't rebel against God, but I rebelled against I don't even want to say Christianity, but just I felt so oppressed by it. And it was after I read so many other spiritual textbooks, like when I got into Buddhism and I got into Zen, into thinking. That's it. Little by little, I kind of found my way back to the Bible, and the Bible verses and the message in it started making so much more sense to me. And I started, because I always, with Bible and Christianity, I always just felt a sense of fear, of doom, of like punishment, and this weight on my shoulder. But then when I went and then I read all this other textbook on spirituality and everything, and I found my way back again on the Bible. And then when I started rereading by the Bible, I was like, oh, okay, it's just a message of love and a love of love. Right? And one thing I really did come to understand, sorry, it's scriptural, but one thing I did really come to understand was that when you really love, when you embrace the beauty of how God has made us, how beautiful you are, how much love you have within you, you really cannot hate. You only hate as much as you can hate yourself.
Right. So true.
And there is no two ways about it. So yes, like from what you were even saying about they are unconverted people, and you are right. They may maybe, tick certain boxes that makes them feel okay to say they are Christian or they are God-fearing people, but they should be saying they are God-loving people.
Right.
Just God loves. That's all. Literally, that's all He does.
Literally.
And the more you love, truly love God, you cannot help but love yourself. And the moment you love God and love yourself, you cannot help but love other people.
And this verse constantly comes back to me. That perfect love casts out fear, because fear has to do with punishment, right? And I think a lot of racist people have this fear that Black people will retaliate one day, right? So they're living in this anxiety of, Black people are going to rise up one day and they're taking over white churches. I've been told this by a family member. They're taking over the UK and, they're taking over. And I think it's living in this fear that Black people will one day rise up and white people, the same thing that white people did to Black people is going to happen. I also think that men, sexist and misogynistic men, live in fear as well of the woman knowing who she's really supposed to be. And imagine if every woman on this planet knew her worth and her value. Like, girl, like the
drama I would not have been in. So many mistakes I would not have made. Trust.
Right. So I think, perfect love, when we love God and when we love ourselves, like, me and you had this discussion on our inbox, there's just it takes away
everything else.
Everything.
And true love is unconditional love. And it's something that I really come to learn. There is this book I really love, and I'm actually going to give you the name of it.
Yes,
it's a bit controversial, but it says the name is A Course in Miracles, and it talks about God. And even the book, I like the fact that sometimes they use he. And at the preface of the book, they say sometimes we use the pronoun he. But that's not to say that God is a he or a she. It's because just to express it in a way that it will be easier for you to understand. Yeah. And there is a thing where they talk about that when you love, like what you were just saying, casting out the shadow of fear, that love and fear cannot coexist, because fear is an illusion and love is the truth. Yeah. You cannot have falsehood and truth in the same place. Yeah. So the moment you accept the truth, you let go of the falsehood, and the moment you accept the falsehood, you let go of the truth. Yeah. And that love is unconditional. It's not based on how a person behaves, on how a person the color of the skin or the status or anything like that. And for me, when I first was reading it, I was like, Really, what do you mean? Look, if someone does something bad to me, what do you mean I should love unconditionally? Like, I mean, there should be some condition, or they should meet some conditions before I can love them.
Yeah.
And it took me a while for me to understand, no, I can love someone without having to have them in my life.
Right? I can love you from afar.
From afar.
I'm doing that so much these days.
Like, I can wish you well without agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Not even a racist person, or even a sexist person. I can love them from the part that they are human as I am, and they are capable of the love that God has put in us, has instilled in us. Yeah. And I wish them well on their journey of self-discovery, because being racist and being sexist, you are only limiting how much love you can feel, how much joy, how much peace you can experience within yourself. And sometimes as well, like you were saying, like people fear that they will lose something. It's because when you've been, let's say, if as a male, your whole identity has been built on you being strong, you being the provider, and you being whatever, there's been this scale. And sometimes, like there's one time, I was around African females, and they were talking about men cheating. And then one of them was like, that's how men are. And I turned around and I was like, well, if that's how men are, why are we complaining about it? Yeah. Like if that's really, truly how they are. Because the moment we say that's how men are, we are giving them an excuse to not be who they are meant to be, to not be loving, caring people. Yeah. Like it's not. So I think, so yes, that's one side of it. And then if as well for a white person, you have always been shown the image that Black people are aggressive or they are opportunistic, which is so funny when white people are the ones that have taken over Africa for
everything all the time.
Oh God.
Wait, let me interrupt you. Like I was having this discussion with a mom in the park, because I have these discussions with people all the time. And I was just saying, how are Black people the aggressive ones, the violent ones, the, whatever, the rapists, when literally the colonialists are the ones that came to our countries, took our land, right? Talk about aggressive, greedy, and they raped our women. They, did all these things and continue to do all these things. How, I don't understand how there's a stereotype of Black people being aggressive. I don't get it. Like, I don't know where it came from. I'm constantly shocked, because I'm just like, we look at history and literally history is showing us that Black people have been oppressed for centuries. Anyway, go ahead.
I just think that speaks, just as you were saying that, is something just clicked in my mind. Like, it even speaks to because I even see that among us African people, like that we can be so against each other, or even accept that we are aggressive, or accept that we are greedy, or accept that that's just the way we are. And I think a lot of it, it just made me think of psychology and of mental health. And like when someone has been shown, there's a very simple quote that if you keep treating someone like a dog, one day they'll be back and bite at you. Yeah. And when someone has been kept being conditioned to think, oh no, I'm bad, I'm not worthy, I'm not thing, and these people are on the scale and I am down here. Obviously, the person who as well have been told, no, you are up there and they are down here. The people who's here is going to be looking down. Who thinks he's up there is going to be looking down. And the person as well who's down here is going to be resentful of it. But also, the whole aggressiveness, if we were really aggressive...
Girl. I'd be like, Jesus, you hold on there for a minute. Let me deal with some things.
There is a show I watched recently. It's called Can You Hear Me? And I think it's a Canadian show about these three women. And oh my gosh, that show actually really broke my heart, because the stories of these three girls really touched me on a personal and just speaks volume to the struggles that women or impoverished or people who are cast who are marginalized, how much they suffer more. And one of them was this girl who is Black, and she was outside of her job. She was having a smoke outside of her job, and then this man came just to take. I was like, you fat, whatever, all the slurs and blah blah blah, black, whatever, all the racist things that I don't even want to repeat. Like, get out of the way. And she looked at me. She was having a really bad day, and then she just slapped him, and then cut then to her having a conversation with her manager, who wants to fire her for having slapped the person because the person called to complain and was like, oh, it's going to call the police and blah, 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 blah. And she responded, the first thing she responded is like, it usually doesn't bother me, but today it did. And then the person responded, but you're better than that. You're supposed to let it.
Better than that.
And then they showed then a whole they show a whole montage of all of the different times where people would come and throw food at her, throw water at her, and insult her, call the N-word, how people have disrespected her so much over her life for her being a Black person.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at the person who is saying you should get over it, and I'm looking at them, why don't you walk in my shoes? And it goes back to speak about that whole thing about being aggressive. Even you have been there. You have had racist slurs thrown at you. And what do you usually do? You keep quiet. I've kept quiet. You keep walking.
I can count on not even 5 times have I ever fought back.
For me, not even once. Not even once.
I've done it once when I was a feisty teenager. I was a feisty teenager again.
Honestly, for me, I feel like what if I say something and then they get more angry and they
hurt you,
or and they hurt me really badly. So then you are talking about us being aggressive. Yeah, you are the aggressor and oppressor.
Yeah.
Over and over and over and over and over and over again. I could see that girl that one specific day. Yeah. She retaliated, and obviously I'm not for violence, but she retaliated, which is I feel like her response was a normal, from a mental health point of view, it was a normal response to the situation.
Yeah.
But yet here she was being penalized.
Yeah.
About to lose her livelihood.
Yeah.
For defending herself, was the person who first oppressed her, who first went out, who was aggressive towards her, is not told anything.
Yeah.
He's not reprimanded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what you see, like in America with the whole thing. How many more people are going to be killed by police officers before they have to riot and tell you no?
Like, it's crazy. When I watch really old shows, and by really old, I mean like 90s, and now all of a sudden I can't think of, I can't think of the name of them. Anyway, a lot of like the Black sitcoms from the 90s, all of them talk about police brutality. Ice Cube, in one of the videos, I think he's talking about F the police. And, this is in the late 80s and 90s. It's been going on. Do you know what I mean? And it changed from Jim Crow, to this lynching by police officers. So it's not even like it ever stopped. It's just different form of violence. So it's been going on for too long. But I think we've been going on for quite a while. I think we've been talking for an hour. So I really wanted to focus on identity. As a mental health, a person that's studying mental health and psychotherapy, what advice would you give to, first of all, let's start with women. What advice would you give to women, and especially women of color and Black women, African girls like me and you, that don't really know where we belong sometimes? What advice would you give us?
For me, I feel like I think you should question what you identify yourself as. I think you should I think the one advice I would give is self-reflection. I think you actually need to make it like a homework. I think women, you need to sit down and write all of the things that you think you are, and actually really ask yourself, why do you think you are that? Question, where did that come from? Is it something that it came from because of how my parents raised me? Is it because of the environment I was raised? Is it because of what media is telling me to be? Is it because of what the church is telling me I should be? I think before you can decide who you are, you need to first understand where you're at right now. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the time, our identities is formed through our developing years. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our identities is based on us trying to survive and trying to cope with the world. So we take on a lot of other people's opinion as our own and make that valid. And then we reinforce it in ourselves over and over and over and over again. And then you just wake up and you just think you're this person, but you don't actually know who you are. And I think identity is not, I am a woman, I am a Black woman, I am whatever. There's so many labels I can put on what quote unquote makes me, but I know ultimately none of that matter. I'm just a human being who mm-hmm. is capable of love and who has love in me. And that's the part of me that I forge more mm-hmm. forward going in my life. And I try to strengthen my own self-love and my love and my way of loving others. But that's me. That's where I'm at with my journey. It doesn't necessarily mean that's where you need to be in your journey, but I think you need to first question, why do you think you are who you are? And what does it really mean to you? What does it mean for you to be a Black woman? What does it mean to be a Christian person? What does it mean to be an Irish Black person living in Ireland or whatever it is? And yeah, it would be, I think you need to really go within first.
I love that. Because it's not until you question that you can even think that there's other possibilities, Mm. Mm-hmm. For a long time, I just went along with what I was told, by culture, by church, and I didn't question. And then I hit rock bottom, and then I started to question everything. And now I'm like a much better version, much better me than I could have ever been, because I am who God wants me to be, and I am who I want to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because sometimes those identities, when those identities are identities that you picked up in ways of just coping with life, as you're saying, like just going along with it, which is, there's nothing wrong with it. We've all done it. And I don't think there's any one person in this world who doesn't do it. But what happens then is when you start, when who you are, like what you like, let's say, for example, if you like you were saying, if you want you and your husband to be sharing the responsibilities of raising your kids and the responsibility of having caring for the kids, then you want that, but then that conflicts with that identity that you were walking around with that says a woman should be in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And then you start feeling guilty. You start feeling that there's something wrong with you. Mm-hmm. Like maybe am I losing my mind and everything? And that again puts you down and can lead you to so much unhappiness in your own life. Because you have all of this conflicting. There's what you want, but there's what you think you should want. Yeah. And so it's only really when you go back and check, okay, where did I pick up that identity? Mm-hmm. Does it serve me? Is it my own, or is it the media who gave me that? Is it this person who gave me that? And little by little, then you start rebuilding your own self. And it's a process. It doesn't happen over one night. It's something you go through as you happen. Like for me, I had to come to a point where I accept that mental health is my passion, that the mind is my passion. But for the longest time, I felt so wrong for talking about it, for wanting to explore that. Or when I want to talk about it, people will be like, oh my gosh, you're being too much.
I know, so especially in our cultures. Nobody wants to talk about it. You're too emotional, you're too sensitive, you're too this. And you're just like, and then there's this idea that I've had cousins of mine say to me, well, I kind of lived the same life that you did, and look at me, I'm fine. And because I was trying to get them, for us to talk about our upbringing and how messed up it was. And they were just like, look, I'm fine. It's just you. And I was like, okay. Anyway.
And honestly, those type of people who says that, I'm always like,
I know.
Twinge of denial in there, my friend. It's twinge of denial in there.
So what would you say to white people?
Oh, no. I would say to racist people, I would say pick up a book.
It's funny because everybody says Google, or read.
Just Google. For one thing, so I say if I'm just gonna, to all the white people, I would say, we do not talk about Black Lives Matter just because we want to talk about Black Lives Matter. We don't talk about we don't talk about it just because we want to talk about it. People are not rioting just for the sake of rioting. Our feelings are so valid, and if you like you were just saying, if you just Google anything about the history of the Black race in the last few hundred years, it's so clear to see all of the oppression that has been made. And, you just be curious. Instead of trying to tell someone racism doesn't exist, you should maybe ask them, what was your experience of racism? And I bet you there's no one Black person living in Western world that has not experienced that. And that just speaks volumes to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that it's really lonely being a Black person in a Western world.
Yeah, very, very lonely. And depending on where you are, this is a bit off topic, but I went to an African and Asian shop in Belfast the other day, right? I hadn't been in probably about 5 years because we moved away, right? And I kept seeing all these Black people, and I was just like, why are there so many Black people? Because I live in East Belfast and there aren't as many. But even my son was like, Mommy, there's a Black man.
That's one thing, a lot of the places I walked out, it's so crazy. Places I walk out, or even like, for example, in school, even in psychotherapy, I'm the only Black person. In my job, there'll be me or maybe another Black person.
Yeah.
There's always the moment where, as I'm sitting on my desk walking away, and I'll just have that space, and I'll just look around and I'm like, okay. And you make a joke and you're like, everybody just kind of looking at you like you're weird, and you're like, oh, okay, let me shut up. Let me just listen.
Yeah.
It is very isolating not being able. There is, it's just cultural differences. But I think, I can't. Some white people do make a lot of effort. I have a lot of white friends. One of my best friends is even white. Like, there is a lot of people who make an effort, but there is still we still have a way to go. And don't and another thing, actually, don't be scared of Black people.
Yeah.
Don't be scared to come and have a conversation with us. You can say hello, and and
I see, right, even in the park, right, because I'm super, like, I'm one of these weird people that's just like, hello, and you can tell some people are just like, and then if they eventually talk to me, they're like, oh, she's just a mom. Like, and literally that's all we are: human beings, people with children, people who are studying, people who just love and want to be loved and wants to just have a conversation, literally.
We have more in common than we have in differences. And one of the things as well is to understand is that your skin color is only because you lived in a zone that was cold for a very long time. So you did not need
the melanin,
to have dark skin color as I do.
Yeah.
That's usually the only difference.
Like, literally, that is all. Like, race is such a social construct. Like, in America, like, they started it in America. I can't remember who it was. I was talking about this on a different podcast, but they created that to justify oppressing Black people. And then slowly, right? So you see Indian people from India, they naturally qualify as Caucasian, but for a long time, they were not allowed into the Caucasian definition because they have darker skin, but everything else about them is Caucasian. And that's because some people and some scientists in a lab in America made up statistics and said, and then want to justify oppressing people because of their skin color. And listen, if life began in Africa, let's even say Middle East, right? Let's just say that. People in those days would have been way darker skinned. Like I watched some Bible stories, right? Like for kids, and everyone's white. I'm like, which Palestine are you talking about?
I know, right?
And I get like Jewish people. Yeah, I get Jewish people now have intermarried so much. They've moved around and whatever. But in first century Judaism or before Jesus, they were not white. David was not a white man. Like I get so.
Oh, I know, right? Oh my gosh, I know. It like you said, it's a whole social construct that has trickled into every aspect of our lives that people are not even aware of the oppression. Like you just said, like all the Bible, like even I have a Bible, I still have it, my dad had given to me when I was a kid that has really images and everything in it. And all of the image, they're all white.
Well, white people, all of them. And you're just like, this is the Middle East where it's hot and sunny and everyone is white. Not a single, not even a tan, not even like.
No, like I remember when I went
straight
to
hair.
I remember when I went to Romania, and Romania is just here. They are white, and but when we're at the Black Sea on the beach, my now brother-in-law, when we went there, he was even telling us, it was like, oh my gosh, like during the summertime and everything, the people who walk on the beach, they all become black, like because of the skin color, just because they're just exposed to so much sun. But it's just that, like that's it. That's the only difference between us, is that I just got so much over generationally. There's so much sun that it just became a skin tone to be able to receive the right amount of the sun rays. And that's why when we come to Western world, we have to take vitamin D as African people, just because we are not able to get the sun, because our melanin is melatonin is higher. And that's the only difference. And you as well, generationally, you've been living in colder, so your skin literally needed to be lighter so that you're able to get the sun rays. That's it.
Like,
so drop the rest.
That's it. And then let me get carried away again, and then we're going to leave. But I've noticed also now when people see me, right? I don't know if it's the same in Dublin, but I know in the UK, some of the higher population of people that are dying are people of color from COVID, right? And it's because we work at the front lines. A lot of us are nurses, doctors, shop people, whatever. And so the other day, I'm sitting outside with my sons outside, and this woman stood beside us. And before she stood beside us, she hadn't covered herself, right? But when she stood beside us, she covered herself. And then this was the same day. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to ignore you because I'm busy eating something yummy. I was having something nice with my kids. And I was like, whatever, crazy. And so then we go into the shop, and I'm literally not even close to this. So there was a customer in front of me, and then the cashier person, and I was reaching for the next customer sign so that I could put that there and start unloading my stuff. And before I could even reach, this woman goes, "You need to move back. You need to move back." Like she proper yelled at me. And I was like, I'm just reaching for this. And she goes, "Well, we just need to social distance." And I was just like, I wonder if that was a white person, would she have reacted that way? Like, would she have even thought to say, "You need to move back"? And would she have talked to them the way she talked to me? And at this point, I'm really upset because I have in my head the woman outside as well. Literally, this was like half an hour of, these two things happened within half an hour. And I'm feeling like some type of way. And like, I'm trying to hold back my tears because like, I hate it when people put me in such an awkward situation and my kids are there. And Elijah's like, "Mommy, why is she yelling?" He's just at that point where he notices everything. And so when I went up there, when the other woman moved, but the funny thing is the customer had no problem with me reaching over, and I wasn't even reaching over her. Like anyway, and so then she tried to be nice to me while she was, running through my stuff. But I feel like I need to say this, and I know like not everyone that's listening to this podcast would even think about this, but a lot of people are thinking that Black people are getting COVID because they're Black, because they have melanin, but it's because they're frontline workers. Like, it has nothing to do with our skin color, like, at all.
Nothing, right? Like, it's those type of, can I, for lack of, to try to keep this civilized, it's those type of ignorant propaganda stuff that are just thrown out there, and then they take a life of their own, and then it adds to a fuel, it adds to a fire, it adds to a divide between us that's not necessary. Like, for me, like, really, I don't, even if Black people are getting the highest rate or whatever, even if and you know, when COVID started, when the whole situation started, I was like, this is such a bad thing that's happening. It's so horrible. People are dying off of this and everything. But in the back of my mind, I was like, thank God this is not like a world war. Thank God this is not one continent attacking another continent and everything. Then people tried to make it the Chinese virus, which was so wrong. But I kept seeing over this last time of COVID-19, people trying to use so many ways to use it again to divide us again. And I'm like, really? What
do you get? Yeah.
What do you get? It's a disease. Do you think, like, I'm just trying to think of you in that situation. Me, my head, I'm like, do you think that I don't want to protect myself? Do you think I don't? I want. What if you have it? And do you think I'm not cautious, or I'm not a person who is thinking?
It's crazy because I know some of Tim's relatives who are white and who have no boundaries, you know, come in and out of my life, my house, you know, even in the middle of lockdown when we're just kind of like, we're trying to isolate, we're trying to, you know, and then I bumped into them in England, right? So these same people, and over at my mom's house, okay? Remember, so in my house and in all the other people's houses here, they don't bother with the mask. They don't bother being careful. They come in and out as they please and then we're in my mom's house, okay? So now I guess because there are more Black people, I've never seen these people more careful. And like, they're covering themselves. And I went to talk to one of them really close, right? Because I'm so used to them never giving me space. And they moved. And I was just like...
It's that type of thing that makes you question, right? I remember, like, there's one of my brothers, I always, you know, when we try to talk about, even talking about, you know, racism in the workplace and everything like that. And, you know, he's big into, like, sometimes we have conversation about, he would sometimes bring it up, like, you know, that there's limited opportunities for a Black person in the workforce because they are Black or whatever. They will discriminate at you from the moment they see your name and blah, 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 or when you come to the interview. And I always used to tell him that, you know, you cannot go into it with that mentality, because that would just put me down. Like, if I was to think about that, you know, I've managed to be blessed and get such great jobs, and especially with my last one. But it was because I applied to thousands of places and everything. Mm-hmm. And if I have to sit here and really think about it, in the fact that this person is not hiring me because I am Black, it will make me so unhappy. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that it's not happening. You get me? And it's the situation like what you're experiencing, where it's like you really don't want to go there. You really are trying to know. Take it in that way, but at the same time, you're seeing the reality of it, and you can't help but question, like, where is this coming from? Yeah. Why is that reaction coming at you?
Yeah. And for me, it was just shocking, because a few weeks after I saw them, they came to my house uninvited again and not covering. But when we were in my mom's house, I guess because you had all these Black people, anyway, so I just thought that was interesting. That's happening with COVID, and people being very overtly racist when they have a higher chance of a white person giving them COVID than me.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it so much. Well, I'm not going to speak for every Black person or for every white person, but I've seen so many. So, like, just even in our area, so many white people just not covered, especially even at the beginning when the first lockdown happened.
Yeah.
But every Black person that we see will always be covered. Like, we will always be the ones. Me with my brother or whatever, we'll always be the ones in the shop covered with our mask on, and everybody else
is not
just going around and everything, just socializing, going to the park, and they're all in bunch, or you see the kids going together. And for me, I'm always like, to each their own. It's your responsibility to take care of you. It's a real shame that you're not thinking about what's safe for you and what's safe for other people.
Yeah.
That shows a bit of a thing. But then there's also these people who come into it trying to say COVID-19 is all fake and everything. And I'm
right?
like,
and you're like,
I'm not even gonna try and address that.
An older white woman said this to me in the park the other week. And I was like, okay, I am not even gonna spare your feelings. So I just said, I looked at her and I said, my stepdad died of COVID. And she didn't know what to do with herself. She was like, oh, well, did he have underlying conditions? I was like, he died of COVID. Like, whether he had underlying diseases, he died of COVID. And I just think it's so insensitive that thousands, millions of people have died and people still think that COVID is fake, that it's not real. Anyway, what would you say to Black people before we end, and then we're going to pray?
To Black people, I would say, there is so much more beauty in us. Mm-hmm. And with our history did not start when the slavery started. Mm-hmm. We come from kingdoms and queens. We are generation. We are the children of king and queens. And, as much as white people oppresses us, or as much as we are confronted with so many situations that oppresses us, it's also on us to educate ourselves and to educate the next generation of how much more proud they can be about themselves and about recognizing their value and their worth. And the more we will recognize our worth, the less we'll be able to stand for someone oppressing us, and maybe that can start a different type of conversation for the generations to come. Yeah.
Let's pray. God, I thank you that perfect love casts out fear, and that there is a piece of the divine inside each and every single one of us. Even those who don't recognize you, even those who have never really heard or considered you, I thank you that there is a piece of the divine inside of us. And I just pray that in these difficult moments, that there will be a reawakening of the divine inside of us, of divine love and divine presence. And I just pray for anyone that has listened to this and wants to know themselves better, wants to do better in the community. Lord, I just pray that you will give them all that they need in their journey of self-discovery, in their journey of healing, in their journey of dealing with some prejudices that they might have had in their lives so far. And I thank you for Consolee. I thank you for the woman that she has become. I thank you for the growth, the self-development, the love, the peace, everything that you've bestowed on her. And I just praise you for her and for her family, her brothers and sisters, her mom. And I thank you that our paths crossed so many years ago, and that we continue to communicate. And so God, thank you for everything. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Receive my mercy and grace. I love you, I love you, I love you unconditionally. Won't you come to me today?